Good morning, everybody. I hope all you are well. This will be the final urbanization video for you, presentation for you, and I promise. And I will have the test review posted up later on this afternoon for you to start studying. And I will post that up on, like, I think Monday morning probably. Might take until Tuesday. I'm still trying to input all the questions into Blackboard and stuff like that. Um, so hopefully I'll be able to get that done before Monday, though. But it might be a day later. But I'll give you until Friday to take it, and then I guess it's finals week after that, and I'll post the final up too. Um, Having said all that, next week though, I'm going to do a presentation on water, environmental science, and how water relates to all this rigmarole as well. That won't be on the test. On the test, I believe it's just going to be human population chapter. All right, all the things that uh, we did after the day of the test. So I think it's human population, um, food and agriculture, and the energy section, and then this urbanization section. So that will be it. It won't be the water section won't be on there, but please watch them. I'll have the excuse me. I'll have the um, tracking on there, so you'll get attendance because this is supposed to be the presentation week. So I really didn't have anything scheduled, but I think a water section would be good because that goes over some pollution for you, pollution controls, and some pretty neat things. And believe it or not, water is going to be a very important aspect of the future. Okay. Um, so I guess let me talk a little bit about Corona. I hope you guys are all watching this and you're staying safe. Okay. I guess it's some good news. The market's going crazy today. It's open. It's planned to be opening up 700 points up. I don't know what's going on with the market, but there have some exuberance over a email that was flowing around about another treatment plan that seemed to be working. Remember, we got to we have ethics and we also have science. So my ethics tells me yes, throw everything at the kitchen and the kitchen sink at this thing. We've done these kind of things for a long time, so we have a good what's called methodology of how to set up these experiments to figure out what will work to help treat people to get better, so we don't have to put them on the ventilators and things like that, right? And not all these things will end up working, but we have a lot of things for malaria and for Ebola and all these different kind of protocols and how we set up these experiments and the drugs themselves. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So all this stuff that you're hearing in the news right now is what's called anecdotal evidence, just emails passed around. Right now we are in a phase of setting up the experiments themselves, and it's got to take time because you got to make sure science needs to dictate this, and we got to make sure that it's a repeated observation that you too can repeat yourself, right? It's got to go through that peer review process and all that stuff, so it takes time. But it's good to hear that we're throwing things, everything but the kitchen sink at it. Also, there's the new government plan for opening up the economy. This just cracks me up. Um, I'm still waiting for the plan of how to not only right now we're at the mitigation phase, trying to suppress that curve, flatten that curve. I want to know how we're gonna suppress it. I want to know what the suppression stage is going to be. And that's what the treatment's about, and that's what the vaccines are about. All right, but we knew until that really happens, we start getting some. We are getting positive news on that because we're throwing everything at the kitchen sink at it. But once we start getting news on that, I think I'll feel a little bit better on it. So I don't know where this is going to head, but it's interesting to watch, right? And oil, right? Oil's down to like $18 in the future. I couldn't believe it. I saw that, and it's supposed to get better because they cut. It's supposed to take 10 million barrels off of daily production. Um, but that's not going to help out because the demand for gasoline and oil is just so low. They're still going to have an oversupply. So we'll see what happens in that range. I don't know if I ever invested in oil. Time now would be the time, I think. But it's still a little risky. Uh, and I still can't bring my conscience to be able to do that. Who knows? Okay. All right. So let's get back to urban environment, and I really love the urban environment. Although I like my rural setting here on my farm because I have a nice little 40-acre farm that I live on. You know, like the rural environment. But when I do study the city areas, my favorite concentration is agriculture and trying to get the food to the city. Remember, we talked about in our last video about how they needed to do the electrical grid and transportation and building efficiencies. Well, my little thing where I study cities and like to really, read up on and uh, gain knowledge is the agriculture part, how we're going to grow food. But there's another aspect too that I love, which is called a green roof. And these just make total sense. I remember I was listening to a guy called Sean Hannity one time, and he's on, a guy, he does this talk show and a TV show. And one time he complained about, oh, he didn't complain. He said, what are we going to do with all the roofs? We're just going to paint them white or grow vegetables on them? And I'm like, yeah, why not? Why can't we do that, right? The painting them white reflects a lot of that heat. It's called the albedo effect. We're already painting them black. Why don't we just paint them white? It reflects everything. If you look at a new Walmart across this university, well, it's not new, I guess, University Boulevard, that whole roof is white. Why do you think that is? It is the laws of thermodynamics. It doesn't trap as much heat as it used to. And when it's all black, it absorbs that, right? White reflects that heat, all right? And then helps that building maintain a little bit more coolness. Okay. And if you can do the same thing, but you put out what's called a green roof on it. All right. And here's a little picture or a little video about green roofs. And I really like these designs. And these can be in cities. It can also be on your house, and on the side of a wall, I think Mexico has like on their highways, those big stanchions that hold the highways up. They have planters in them and green binding stuff just come down off of them, and it's great. Right, it looks good. Plus, it helps clean up the pollution and do some of that ecological services for us if you plant the right plant, right? And then they planted the right plant. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's meant to help clean up the air. So let's watch this little video about green roofs here.
This is the largest green roof in New York City. It's in the middle of bustling Manhattan, on top of the Javits Convention Center, a behemoth of a building with a 6-block footprint. But the roof hasn't always been green. Before 2014, it was totally barren. Now, just a few years later, when people walk out onto the roof, they say things like,
"Amazing, that's great, I didn't expect this, what a surprise."
But besides the great reactions, there are practical benefits.
We have 300,000 bees. We've seen 25 different species of birds on the roof. We reduced the temperature up here by about 6 degrees Fahrenheit. And we also save about 7 million gallons of stormwater runoff that's absorbed in the
You got to pick
soil
out the
and
right
plants
kind
that
of
are on
plants
it.
for this,
We've been
right?
able to reduce our energy consumption
So it's like the
by
biome.
6%, and that translated for us last year into a saving of about $3 million.
That's a nice savings, huh?
How does one green roof get
Nice
so much
biodiversity.
done? And what are all of the not green roofs in New York City doing with their lives? First, let's see how much roof space actually exists.
They are a major part of urban landscapes. The round number that most of us think exists about 1 billion square feet. 1 billion with a B.
That's like 22 times the size of Central Park in roofs. And in most cities, what isn't roof is another impermeable surface, like road, sidewalk, or parking lot. And these surfaces create a lot of problems for cities that green roofs can actually help solve. Let's take a look at 3 of these issues. The first is stormwater runoff.
Rainwater goes into pipes. It combines with what's called sanitary
Something
water.
that not
When
too many
it's
people
with
think about is
rainwater,
the
which
runoff
happens
issue.
hundreds of times a year around Manhattan, the wastewater
And city
treatment system
planning is
shut down.
very
It's about
important
just
about
let
that,
the water just shunt out into
especially with
rivers,
increased
that's human
rainfalls.
sewage.
Is that
The
system
biggest
able to
source of
handle that?
pathogens to the Manhattan Island with green roofs, that water, instead of going into the drains and polluting the environment ends up just evaporating to the atmosphere through the leaves of these plants.
And then there's what scientists call the heat island effect, which basically means that cities are significantly warmer than the surrounding areas.
Well, I've seen asphalt roofs get up easily 170, 180
Human
degrees
caused
Fahrenheit in the strong
warning.
sunlight.
Oh,
They
imagine that.
about 90 to 95% of the sunlight. Green roofs, by comparison, are
And
close
it's just
to
thermal mass.
air
All
temperatures.
those streets
Another problem
and
green roofs can help solve is
buildings
habitat
hold in
loss.
that thermal mass in the
Cities can
sun during the
shrink or
day
destroy the green
and
space
then
that's
release it
crucial
during the
for
night,
certain
keeping it
plants
hotter.
and animals to survive.
Currently, a lot of species might occur in smaller parks throughout the city that are relatively unconnected, but having high densities of green roofs would allow those patches to be more connected, letting, for example, butterflies travel from patch to patch with lots of stepping stones of green roofs.
Those are onion,
And these are just 3 of the problems
part of the
green
onion
roofs can
family.
help solve. But to really put a dent in any of these issues, cities would have to implement green roofs at a large scale. Stuart Gaffin, the research scientist you heard from earlier, estimates that if all of New York City's 1 billion square feet of roof space were greened, those green roofs could lower the city's temperature by nearly 2 degrees
Holy
Fahrenheit
guacamole, 2
and
degrees.
absorb over 10 billion gallons of stormwater each year.
Whoa, huh?
As cities continue to grow, all that empty roof
Jobs,
space
jobs,
starts
jobs,
to
baby.
look more
I'd like to be a
and more like
gardener
an
on a green roof.
opportunity, an untapped resource, a future ecosystem of problem-solving meadows in the sky.
And you see, these aren't the edible plants either. So this is, each one has a certain kind of biome. You need to be careful about what you plant on top of there so they can live, because we don't want a ton of soil per se on the roof, because it just adds that weight, right? We got to keep it a little bit lighter. So there's also some building techniques, engineering techniques that you got to implement. And then you need to know your horticulture, what grows on top of that roof, and then you need to design it. But I love green roofs. I want one, right? On my Earthship. When I retire in my Earthship, I'm gonna have a green roof on that thing. All right, that's gonna be the key. All right, on my farm, of course. But I'll be close to the city because I love Pittsburgh. So urban sustainability. With the increased population that we're having in the world, we're going to have to be able to put these people somewhere, and we're going to put them in cities. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be, or the way that the world is trending, I should say. All right? But the consequences of urbanization are very complex, and we kind of talked about gentrification yesterday, in the last presentation. And that is one of the biggest complexities we have. Should we be able to revitalize those inner cities that have gone down, and that chases out the people that can't afford there, and then the rent gets too damn high, and we have upheaval, and those people just go into, it's just a spiraling down for some, but a spiraling up for others. How do we make that more equal? All right, but it also has positive and negative effects on the environment as well. So moving people, like I talked about many times, moving people into cities is a very efficient way. All right. But then we also, since we're in those areas, we're earning more money and have more disposable income, we consume more. And that also has a negative effect. So it's that rebound effect. You're getting more money, and then the environment goes out. And plus, we have the total input and export of the import of our materials and the export of our waste in the cities grows exponentially as well when we're in the cities. So urban dwellers are exposed to a lot of different things, a lot of heavy metals, industrial compounds, and airborne pollutants, and thermal pollution, that heat pollution that they talked about in the video, the heat island effect in the city. And as it gets more global warming, we're going to see more and more people hurting from heat exhaustion. Right, and that's starting to show up at a lot of the summer times, especially Pakistan had a big death rate due, it was like super hot in one of their cities last summer. Okay, so that's what thermal pollution would be. But you can even just imagine the heavy metals from all the cars and trucks and factories going around in the city area. All right, so cities can also export their waste, export some of the waste, including the air pollution. So though Pittsburgh is downtown, and we don't really see it because of the you got to go through the tunnels here. That air still goes up there and blows over onto the local suburban areas. Okay, until finally those pollutants sooner or later will fall down to the ground. But even in the areas around it, I think this Corona uh, outbreak, Louisiana, they have a higher death rate in this one little area or town section of the town. And that town's nickname is called Cancer Alley, right? Because they live right behind a gasoline refinery, an oil refinery. And those pollutants have led to the years that area, those people that live downwind from that area have higher rates of asthma and cancer and all this other rigmarole. I mean, the demographics of their health statistics is it's a red liner. It's a red flag, and that's why they call it Cancer Island. They're not the only place in town that has that, but that has been in the news. I mean, that's what they're talking about here in this slide, about how not only the urban environment, creates these things, the people downwind get those pollutants as well. Okay, and they transfer those costs of those activities to other places. So those people in Louisiana are paying for that, right? That cost, right? That I guess maybe that cost gets transferred onto society instead of onto the company itself. So cities tend to have an ambient temperature that is several degrees higher than the surrounding areas, and this is just due to thermal mass. We talked about and renewable energy. When the sun comes up, it warms something up, and then over the nighttime, it diffuses it, right? And that's what's happening. All these skyscrapers and roads and paved areas are absorbing the heat of the sun, using their thermal mass to absorb that and then radiate out to hit that equilibrium. Okay, this is called the urban heat island effect, and it results from concentrations of buildings, vehicles, and factories, and all that rigmarole going on. And sometimes the air particles can also trap that heat, right? But the pollution can also reflect it too. It depends on what compound is in the air. Cities and towns are resource sinks, right? Meaning they have to import nearly everything they need to be able to feed and clothe and house and everything. I mean, everything's imported into their area. So that stuff goes there and kind of disappears and gets used in that little area. Although delivery of resources to urban centers can be energy intensive, it can deliver efficiencies once it arrives, right? So when we do the break even, we realize that these cities are actually more efficient in using those needed resources such as the food, the clothing, and the housing and stuff like that. There's just some other environmental effects that overflow on that because we got everybody amassed in one area. All right. But they really have been very efficient once we're using it. Right? If you think about the electricity, we don't have a huge grid going all over the United States because everybody's spanned out. When we're in the city, we need less copper wires to run that electricity. Okay, that's just an easy one to understand. So cities have always had ecological footprints much greater though than their actual geographical area because they're packed in. But consumption is more highly tied to the wealth than living in an urban environment or rural area. Okay, so there's no real difference between maintaining a lifestyle in a rural or urban area. It's just that the people living in cities tend to have more money, so they have more disposable income and they consume more. Right? And that's the way our world is designed. We want to be able to, everybody wants, the more we consume, the better it is. And the more money you have, the more you're consuming. So since people are packed together in the density of cities, more land outside to them is left undeveloped, which is a good thing. All right, so we got to remember that environmental impact that we still have more room out there. All right, so if you really thought about it, if all 7 billion people were evenly spread across the planet, there would be a lot less room for agriculture and wilderness, biodiversity, privacy. It would just be nuts. right? 10 million people in New York City um, were spanned out all across the New York State. New York State would be, nothing but one big huge suburb. So cities that import all their resources and export all the waste have what's called a linear one-way metabolism, right? We get that stuff in and then we move it on out. And that's the way it was designed from the beginning. That's the way we decided as a society to make our cities. But in the next world, all right, we need to start thinking about sustainability, making sure that we can meet the needs of the present without compromising the needs of the future. And we need to make our cities more sustainable. And to do that, they must use a circular system, just like in industrial ecology we talked about in the last couple sections, where those factories all work together. One factory's waste was another factory's product, right? Um, we also talked about the circular economy, where we try to keep things inside, for one product, make it work, last as long as possible. When it was done being used, it can be recycled. All right. We also have what's called the urban ecology, right, which is a field that treats cities as an ecosystem, and they must develop ways to recycle the wastewater and resource efficiencies, and develop green technology. So hopefully in the future, that's the way we're going to look at our cities, instead of just import the raw materials and export all the waste. We're going to try to make them all circular, right? Where even the food that you have, or at least your salad greens, comes from the skyscraper right next to you. Okay. In 2007, New York City unveiled its plan called the Plan New York City, that aimed to improve the lives of its residents and increase overall sustainability. Um, and its goals were to improve energy efficiency in 704 buildings. Right? So they had, they picked out these buildings that they knew that they could, or I guess they put out bids, and people won their little contest, and they actually started revamping these buildings. Okay, which makes sense. That's probably one of the first things, get the low hanging fruit out there and that low hanging fruit is just easily rebuilding and revamping the buildings around us. Right? They planted over 950,000 trees in New York City. Where did they find the area? Right? Probably on a couple roofs. Right? That'd be nice on the city sidewalks. Okay. Opened and renovated 234 playgrounds over this time. I mean, that's one of my favorite things. Just have some playgrounds to go around in New York City. That also allowed a lot of the green space to open up. So they established 129 community gardens. They took some of those housing and vacant lots that were just kind of, where the hobos go or whatever. I don't know if you want to call them hobos. I don't know what to call them. They took those small little lots that were evacuated and put a little urban farm there. Right, a community garden, and that brings the pride back to that little area too. A nice little space where people can go get their own food. Acquire 36,000 acres to protect the water supply in upstate New York. Okay, because with 10 million people, and we'll talk about this in the water section next week. With 10 million people, you got to make sure they have something to drink. Okay. So sections like this in Portland show that cities can be more sustainable. So there's a lot of examples of sustainable cities in the United States, and also around the world. Dubai has I told you about those little islands out there that they built off the side of their country that are supposed to be little sustainable cities. Okay, some people don't think that Dubai's doing too good of a job, but I don't know. You can make up your own mind, but you can just go ahead and Google sustainable cities, and you'll see a lot of examples of ways cities today are really revamping their ways and trying to become more sustainable. Costa Rica is one of my favorite examples, of course. Right? Denmark, Stockholm. There's a lot of European countries as well. So that's it for the urbanization. Okay, and once more, I will sometime today try to get the review for you posted for the test coming up next week. Okay, and then we got our finals, and also don't forget that we'll have a presentation on water. Talk a little bit about water next week. Okay, so if you have any questions, drop me a line. Thanks, and keep in touch. Bye.